Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you may be as you tune in to this show. I am Larry Fields, attorney Larry Fields, and I am grateful to be here with my brother, Dr. Charles Alexander. This morning, and you are listening to The Level Set. We have an ongoing topic of discussion for us and a ongoing I think it's more than a discussion. It's something that we attempt to learn more about actively. And Dr. Alexander has devoted his life to the area of mental health. We find ourselves already in the month of May, which has been designated as Mental Health Month. But here on the Level Set, there are very few shows that we don't at some point mention the impact and the importance of of doing things to bolster one's mental health, actively or or passively. And before we get started, shout out to my mother and celebrating her heavenly birthday yesterday, May 3rd. Speaking of mental health, because that was my first teacher of self-care and the importance of it. My mother was a nurse by training. And so those were the things that were handed, and I developed an appreciation for that at an early age, for which I am greatly indebted to Elizabeth Crawford Hewlett Fields. And having said that, Dr. Alexander, I'm going to pass the floor to you and enlighten us on, on some additional um, subjects as it relates to mental health.
Thank you, brother, and hello, everyone, and happy heavenly birthday to Mother Fields. Um, so we are on the fourth day of Mental Health Awareness Month, and um, and really the month is really just about that. It's a call. It's like literally it's a call to action, and it's interesting because um, a lot of times when we're in when we're in these spaces, we're in uh, conversations about mental health. It's just not uncommon for people to say stuff like, well, we ain't used to have, we ain't used to, it used to be a time when, da, da, da. Well, like mental health awareness is not a new thing. Mental Health Awareness Month has its origins in 1949,
Wow.
and which I think is interesting. Given the nature of our conversations, because 49 posits the establishment of Mental Health Awareness Month with all of the stuff that we talk about. And so I'll certainly do a deep dive on this at some point. Not prepared to do that part of it today, but just the thought that this is around the formation. This is around um, the formation of the occupation that we're fighting now, or that is being fought now, right? And so just all of the things that were going on in the world in 1949, and certainly the things that were going on in the world prior to, coming out of a war and coming out of a war and on the way into another war, right? And so and the dynamics of things that were going on, in the U.S. and again and abroad, that a person would create such a thing to bring awareness and attention to those suffering. But other thing to consider, as we get into any of these awareness months, but definitely with mental health awareness, you see that there's literally a need to sit down and be intentional about this. Otherwise, the way that this thing works, you get caught up in all of the bells and whistles. It's very easy to get distracted by this thing, this thing that we call the United States, and more specifically, the United States popular culture. And you could get caught up in this space to the detriment of your own mental health, right? And,
Doc,
and that's where we are.
Doc, let me ask you this. If you were to summarize what the goal of the status quo of the United States is for its populace, what would that be, and how would that affect, how does that affect our mental health, and how should we attack things?
So, so it's so crazy that we try to figure out why people are stressed. So status quo for a capitalist economy is dang it, what's the word? There's a more succinct way to say limited resources, right? But the word escapes me. But our system is predicated on the
Scarcity.
So we operate on this scarcity model. Thank you, sir. We operate on a scarcity model that drives home the need to get while the getting is good, or else. So we live in a perpetual state of or else, right? And when you're in that space, you tend to act out of a sense of panic as opposed to well thought out plans. So literally, we're living in the fight or flight state. We're living in an alarmed state. And so, and we know for us, so we're top number one killer, heart disease. Why? Because we are literally fighting or fleeing every waking moment. And because we're fighting or fleeing, we have many waking moments because we're over alerted, we're over aroused, we're hyper aroused is what the phrase actually is. We're hyper aroused, so we ain't getting no sleep, right? And so that's the status quo. And we think it's for us. No, it's the whole system. It just looks worse for us because it actually is worse for us because we get to be the dumping ground. But it's that, like, the need for white folks. So if we look at heroin, right? So heroin, cocaine, none of these drugs was drugs because they wanted to infiltrate the Black community. They was drugs because white folks was using them. White folks have alcohol, all of this, white folks have historically self-medicated, right? We got into self-medication. They're the ones that created these markets for self-medication, right? Because that's what they, that's what their culture said to them was the thing to do, as opposed to addressing the culture, right? And so instead of, and for us, it's an upside down culture because we are not an individual. We're not culturally, from a cultural historical perspective, we're not an individualist group, right? And so we are collective and communal people. And so then, to have us here in an individualistically based society is upside down for us off the rip, right? And so then if you say this thing is based on a scarcity model and resources for us are scarce because systemic factors and forces, i.e. white supremacy, then we're always confronted with now, with the moment. And so that's how the system is set up. So that must be how the system is intended to run.
That rugged individualism aspect of this culture really is to our detriment. And, to your point, Thomas Sowell, me and I agree on very little, the famed Black economist, but a Keynesian-astic framework is one that doesn't apply. All resources are not scarce. There's plenty for everyone in a number of things. And that was one of the reasons why Dr. Martin Luther King was villainized, because he stated, we have surpluses, and you still get the surpluses to individuals that need to have them. That is, that's something that needs to be front and center. That boogeyman that we are creating before we even engage in any competition internally is something that definitely has to negatively impact life expectancy and quality of life.
It absolutely does. And why we need mental health awareness is that there are things that we have grown to kind of accept as being, like just innately us, or just parts of life. Like we've started to maybe I shouldn't use the word start. Maybe I should just say, because that creates temporal issues for people. Because then you start, there are things that go on for us that are really like signal points and moments from a physiological and neuropsychological and somatic point of view that are literally, they're signals, they're warning signs that we've normalized over time, that we've made an adaptation to, right? And we consider them just a part of normal aging. And they aren't. They are indications that there's something wrong. And we don't change whatever we can change. Those things that we could change in our environment, we don't change those things. And so we live with, all of these things. And so for example, again, the scarcity model creates a baseline level of stress. That baseline level of stress, as I said, will create, anxiety and fear. That fear and anxiety will cause us, it will cause us to prepare to address the threat. Well, our threat is chronic, which means we're always in that state, as I said before. And so if you're in that state before, you just, in the interest of either fighting or fleeing, you have muscle tightness, because you got to get ready to swing or you got to get ready to run, right? You have, increased heart rate. Why? Because you got to pump more oxygen. You need the blood to pump more oxygen into your brain, into your extremities, so you can fight or run, right? You have less, so everything is going to the extremities, really nothing going on. The intent is for nothing to go on in your stomach, because you don't want to be having to, release your bowels or your bladder, right? And but this is supposed to be a 15-minute thing. This is supposed to be long enough for you to get out of the situation. Your perceptual view becomes more streamlined, right? You're like,
you get tunnel. You get tunnel.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Because again, the thing is the threat and the escape. See, these are things that are happening to you. But again, they're supposed to be 15 seconds, long enough for you to get to safety. We live in a chronic state of that. And so what happens if your body is steadily, living in this ramped up state, then your body first of all, one of the things that happens in order to supply all that, your body produces sugar, right? And so again, it's only supposed to do that for 15 seconds, and then it regulates. But if you're in this chronic state, it's constantly doing that, right? And so you have the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline to keep you on 10. Well, that's if you are in this if that temporary state becomes a chronic state, now you're necessarily hyper aroused because your body is continuously, producing those chemicals. And so one of the things that we know with folks that have, kind of the heart disease is not, one of the things that they have valve issues. Well, part of the reason why we have valve issues is because our hearts are literally overworking, because of this heightened state, this hyper arousal. Other thing that happens in that is that those, we're not supposed to have that level of chemical in our system all the time. Again, it's for 15-second, 20-second bouts, and then we're supposed to come back down. We get exhausted. We get physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. And the more exhausted we get, the more of a toll that is taken on our immune system. And because of that, then, we can't fight off, health threats, environment, toxins in the environment and things of that nature. And so, so this thing is a chronic piece. This is the nature of our existence. There's always a threat that confronts us. We are still impacted by the scarcity model. There are always new external threats coming at us. So we literally don't have time to relax. And so then when our bodies start to tell us that this is what's going on, we say things like, oh, I'm just getting old, so my back's supposed to hurt. No, your back is not supposed to hurt. Your back is not supposed to hurt. Got this stiffness in my neck. This tightening in this. Like we have people that we probably have far too many people who are, self-medicating because of, what they think is structural deficits, or problems, but are really just muscular problems because they ain't never stretched. And you walking around in this condition again, in this tense condition. And, and some of this stuff I know because I had thoracic outlet syndrome. My back was like mangled. But mine was due to growing up, like working out and not stretching actively, right? And so just muscle building and then just, mass and muscle and all that, and it starts to press stuff where, tightly where it ain't supposed to be. But that same thing can happen if you're just walking around in this, with this hypertonicity and you're not stretching, you're not relaxing, these things occur, and then you're not stretching and you're probably doing other things in just terms of your movement that are incorrect. And so you end up with these injuries, but you just accept them because that's just what's supposed to happen. And so, but if we don't have like these awareness months that cause people to kind of stop and reflect on how they're living and what they're doing, some of these small things, we miss. And so, like the person who doesn't sleep at night, it just gets normal, right? It's, I can go on 4 hours. That's not good. That's not good. Now, everybody probably doesn't need 8 hours, but, 4 hours, you probably need more than 4 hours.
What does
Right.
the body do while it's asleep that needs to be done every night that takes
Man,
long?
we find all kinds of. I mean, fundamentally, it rests. You know, your body rests. Your brain is necessarily still working. We know that your brain is still working. Why? Because we have dreams. But you know, there's a lot of memory consolidation. So a lot of the things that have gone on in your day, in your week, whatever, your brain is processing some of that stuff. You know, while you sleep, which is why it's necessary that you sleep, because there are brain functions that are occurring, and I imagine there are some different chemicals that your body releases overnight that it doesn't during the day that help to keep the body, that help to again, uh, um, probably metabolize some of that other stuff that your body produces during the day, so that again you can get back to a restful state. And so we have fight or flight, and then we have rest and digest, right? So um, yeah, sympathetic system and a parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system gets you to fight or flight. Parasympathetic gets you to rest and digest. And so those things together are intended to kind of be, optimally, you're in this space of homeostasis where both systems have kind of done what they needed to do. And so, in that restful state, your blood pressure should go down. Your heart rate should go down. Your circulation is now throughout your body. Your digestion can occur. Just normal, kind of really like the full range of activity. And then, like I said, memory consolidation, things of that nature. And so those and just general rest, those are things that should be happening. But if you are in a constant state of hyperarousal, that can't happen. The body's ability to just take care of itself can't happen because it's literally fighting or fleeing. That's how it's built, right? And
That is,
so,
yeah, that's incredible. I had two questions though, Doc.
mhm.
Because I've had the great privilege to represent a number of firefighters and teachers and police officers. These are individuals that are put in positions that essentially have had to disconnect away from the fight or flight speedometer by virtue of their profession. All of those things that you stated occurs, and your body and brain has one mission when you are confronted with a hostile and potential harmful situation, like, I don't know, running inside of a burning building. Your body is trying to tell you to move away from that, but you've got to disconnect from that, from what your body's saying, and run to the harm. And there's no fighting. So you got to fight. So you got to fight. What things can individuals that are confronted with that on a daily basis do in order to to invoke some sort of self-care and handle those hostile situations? And the second question I have is, what can we do to reduce those two hormones? Or actually, what are we doing that we don't need to do to increase the cortisol levels, to increase the adrenaline levels that we don't need to do, that we can cut out?
I'll start with the last part first. Very simple. People really think this is kind of condescending, but it's just the truth. The most basic and fundamental mental health intervention is deep breathing.
Mm.
Like literally, you take 3 deep breaths, 3 to 5 deep breaths, diaphragmatic breath, meaning that you're breathing from your stomach as opposed to, sticking out your chest, like you're actually inhaling, big belly, push that back out. if you do that, what do you think that tells your body? It tells your body that we good. If you wrest control of your breathing and you slow it down, or you start to breathe intentionally, that tells your mind that we're good. You like literally force the rest to digest. And so then you cause your body to shift into this parasympathetic space. Now, a lot of times when you tell people that, they'll be like, so what breathing gonna do, when, when my rent is due? The breathing ain't for your rent. the breathing is so that you can relax, so that you can make some better decisions in terms of, what options are for you to handle your rent. But again, if you're in this heightened state, you're not functioning optimally, from a cognitive perspective. And so the most basic thing is to be able to do that. It allows your body to reset, and it disrupts the fight or flight cycle. So that's just the basic, most fundamental thing. Again, assuming you're not in an immediate threat, you're in immediate risk, then you gotta let the course of things take hold. But as soon as you get to a place of safety, then you might have to, be intentional about bringing it down. So that's one thing. Another thing, we have to be thoughtful about the types of things that we consume. And so, we probably drink too much coffee. We probably drink too much caffeinated tea. We probably drink too many sugary drinks.
What is the impact of that coffee situation?
Well, the caffeine is a stimulant, right? And I had to look, because I've forgotten, I've forgotten what if any type of burden caffeine, like the metabolization of caffeine. I've forgotten if it in of itself is a problem, but I do know. So like when you have too much caffeine, it mirrors other things, So it's very, very, very common thing for people. I was just working on a case this past week. Lady said she drank. She there was days where she was drinking 12 energy drinks, and then she was like, "I think I had ADHD." So no, you don't have ADHD. you got
overstimulation. You overstimulate.
Yes. And so as but it too is that's it's toxicity, so you're just, so you're overstimulated because of all that caffeine. So you got caffeine intoxication. Right. And so, but again, we got Starbucks on every corner. You can get $1.50 big cup of coffee from McDonald's, probably from Burger. People, we are selling stimulants over the counter, like, and so people do it, So like the people who stay up, who can't sleep, and then they drink coffee all through the day, and they probably drink their last coffee at about 4 or 5, and it's probably 32 ounces of coffee or some other kind of, energy drink. Well, your body might not be able to go to sleep at 9 because you still got all of that caffeine running, right?
And
so,
and I'm guilty of that. So I can tell you that 2 months ago, I did an inventory on myself. I was going through and looking at, I have alopecia. I developed as an adult. Around the same time I started handling juvenile cases in DC, alopecia areata. And so I went back And this is several years ago. I mean, decades ago. And I said, well, what am I doing differently now than I did prior to developing alopecia? And the thing that stood out was the drinking of coffee. And I mean, that's when I, studying for the bar. Actually, it was, I think, my last year of law school. I started drinking coffee, and I, drink a tumbler of coffee almost every day. So I can tell you that said not just coffee, but I was going to cut out, I cut out caffeinated tea and everything else. And inside of that 3 months, Doc, I've seen a profound difference. I'm remembering dreams. I can now I know I've researched and our cortisol levels naturally peak every morning, depending on where you are, roughly 3 in the morning. That's when your cortisol levels peak. And they go down as the day goes. So your cortisol, essentially, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, they work in tandem with your energy level. Your cortisol helps with the energy, and it's not, you don't want to eliminate it. But I have found that my cortisol levels are so strong, I don't ever need any caffeine at all. And with that caffeine in my body was focused on getting that caffeine out all day and all evening instead of making those repairs that you talked about. I can tell the difference in my skin. I can tell I'm a guy that intermittent fast and so forth. My body was not focused on losing weight. My body had gone into famine mode because we had an interloper inside of our system that had my body fighting against itself. So, the cortisol in my body had my body wanting to maintain weight because we thought a threat was there. So I think that is an issue that I'd love to read some longitudinal studies on, but that's an issue that we need to deal with right away because it had a profound impact on me. And I mean, this is a short period of time, Doc.
And I mean, I think that we need, you know, again, had this conversation many times on here, just in terms of, literacy. I think our, you know, we have constant conversations about the need for financial literacy, but we don't have constant conversations about the need for health literacy, right? And so, and biological processes, neurophysiological processes. These are things that we should be more knowledgeable about, so that we can, better, not so that we can self-diagnose, so that we can just in a clear and succinct way say what we're experiencing. Know what we, I mean, people think I'm playing, but people literally come to me and, well, what's wrong? Well, my boss was saying some stuff, and I was just feeling a certain kind of way. Well, what is that? You know how it is. Like, what do you mean? You can't sleep? I mean, no, I mean, I was good, but after a while, I start tweaking. Like, none of that tells me nothing. And these aren't kids; these are adults who can't find the way. They can't, they can't find the words to describe what's happening. Right now, if so the other thing that we need to know in this space is that there's a and this is providers across disciplines, so not just mental health, but certainly there's a scarcity of Black clinicians, whether you're talking about with what I'm about to say is also is a literacy issue. Whether I'm talking about psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, or counselors, there's just a dearth. We're literally in the scarcity model in that space, right? And so the chances that you're going to find a person who looks like you that's going to service you is really kind of rough. And so if you don't have a professional and culturally competent Black person sitting in front of you, the chances of you finding a culturally competent white clinician or other is really slim. Meaning that you're gonna have somebody that can sit down and literally decipher and decode some of the things that you're saying. You know, um, you know, and so that's so we have to do some work in those spaces, and so we have to start to teach people these things from this is one of the things that we have to teach our kids in whatever spaces that we have our kids. If there are formal activities, then that kind of stuff needs to be in the content of that formal activity. Informal activities, that kind of stuff needs to be. We have to. Our health is fundamental. So we have to have that. And we have to help people to understand the social determinants of health. Environment matters. Like just a if you look at when we're looking at the color conventions and we're looking at the various manifestos, all those manifestos include some aspect of what we would consider determinants of health. We want meaning.
Every single
we want meaningful work. We want meaningful work, and we want to be a productive part of the community. We want financial stability. We want adequate housing. We want general health care. We want to live free of harassment. Like all of those things are determinants of health. And we disproportionately, live in the midst of things that are other than that.
It was predicated on the riots in Cincinnati and the well-being of those individuals in the first place.
And so if you go all the way down to to the Black Panthers or to the Nation of Islam, any other organization, and you look at whatever their tenets are, they somehow relate to these types of things. And so all of that stuff is important. And again, that's kind of why we have a mental health awareness month. And and then we have to know that, again, when we get to the fact about like the leading causes of death for us, all of those things have high comorbidity, meaning that they co-occur with mental health issues. So people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, stroke victims, these folks have disproportionately high rates of depression and or anxiety. Right. And so all of these things exist, to the detriment of quality of life and longevity. So we are happier. We're unhappy for shorter amounts of time, meaning we spend a lot of, we are unhappy and we die earlier because we're unhappy and unhealthy. And so, these things, we have to teach people these things in that context, and again, have people to do some of the simple things that can help, relaxation techniques, deep breathing, meditation, yoga, walking, like all of this doesn't require that you pay, this person or that person, some of these things you just do,
Shout out to the St. Louis Collective. When you're home once, I would love to have you join this community of youngsters, man, young educators. And actually, one of the founders, I think, is a lawyer now. They put together a wellness community and they offer 6 yoga classes a week. And the contribution for that is voluntary. Whatever you decide to give, they accept. And And I tell you, there are these young black instructors. I don't think any of them well, are over 50 at this point, maybe not even 45. And I tell you, I go, 3 or 4 times a week. It is phenomenal. And it's not just yoga, it's the community of wellness that they're so, and I'm sure every major city has something similar, I would hope.
And yes, and so those type, those like literal indigenous supports, and that's actually the direction I was about to go in response to your other question. And that is the key to the first responder is preparedness. And so that's, you know, I live by a um, training center there's a fire training center, fireman training center located in Homewood, like literally 50 yards from my house. And so of course Homewood uses it, but other communities use it as well. And they're always training, always training. And so um, I wish police trained more, but but that's part of it for
Man,
them is the training and the reps. All of those reps, the intent of those reps is to kind of normalize, your response patterns and sequencing, cognitive sequencing of what you're getting, which in theory help you to, thoughtfully and intentionally respond, you know, respond with in a way that you can manage the natural, to respond and to the threat as opposed to flee. Right. So it's like it's building your it's kind of numbing the practice of it. Numbing is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like it minimizes
normalize it. If you want
yeah,
to,
normalizes the response or whatever.
and
And
I
so
guess it's no different than, a point guard that, is just practices ad nauseum how to deal with the trap in the middle of a game. Um,
correct.
but
All of
but
these, yes, great example. And um, you know, it or like me doing this, like it's the bear, right? So the fire is the bear for the, so and so it's the reps. And then when when you're off duty, you have to rest, right? You got to find ways to relax and things of that nature. Um, Again, I think fire departments do this better than the police departments. Um, Firemen, 4 days on, 3 days off, stuff like that. And, um, policemen get work these horrendous hours and they get a lot of flip flopping. So it's very hard, of service, many police over the course of my time. And it's very, one of the two things for the police is they can't, their sleep cycles are off because X number of them, they'll work a day shift for X amount of time, then they invert it, and they have overnight, then they have they had this flip flopping thing going, um, and then just the tension that exists in the job, they're like literally walking around in flight, and none of them walking around in flee because they got a gun, right? And so even if they're scared and they are tolerating, their
except that
their
one Parktown police officer that
right,
left those babies vulnerable. He
he's just standing outside, and so but it would help, if they had more consistent types of training, if they have more training in you know in de-escalation or just relating, period, and so I think on the police side of it, I think they create a certain amount of stress because I think that I think many police, baseline for them is adversarial relations with the community. And that's black or white or whatever color they are. They think it's a us versus them. And so that's gonna get you into the fight or flight off the rip under normal circumstances. That's how that's how you're kind of moving around. And so, but to the degree that they're able, even if you can't sleep, lay down and turn off everything. One of the huge problems that most people have, not most people have, if you can't sleep, you do something to make it worse. You turn on the TV, now you turn it on a device. That white light confuses your body. So if you're already having trouble sleeping, and then you turn on white light, now you're telling your brain, oh, it's time to get up. Just some of the best sleep that you can have is if you can black out your room. You get some dark curtains or whatever, so that you're not getting no outside street light or anything of that nature, and you're not getting any other artificial light from your house or your room or whatever, and just be in that space and breathe and relax. Even if you're not able to go to sleep immediately, your body is resting, right? And so we have to do those types of things, and that's not just the police and the fire department. That's all of us. That's how all of us, we should be looking to relax, But we have to be intentional about that. We have to be intentional about that, and and then we have to think about this whole thing, like there's probably more trauma that occurs because because we have a loved one with a medical emergency, than that we know somebody or are a witness to a shooting, right? And so one of the things that I am also is I'm certified crisis response emergency team for Chicago, and first aid and AED certified trainer, all that, because we are first responders and we need to take that kind of perspective. And so, like when we're having family gatherings and somebody has a medical emergency, that person's life is compromised from the onset of that until emergency responders get there. But if you know CPR, you can stabilize that person before the paramedics arrive. If you know CPR, right? We like to grill, right? Everybody don't practice fire safety. You got burn victims that you could treat on the site until the people come, as opposed to folks languishing in pain and distress. We can learn just basic wound care for basic burn. We can learn these things. And so in much the same way that what helps the environment and what helps policemen, get through these things. I mean, the same thing is why the Army drills and drills and drills and drills and drills. It's because it literally deadens that flight response. It normalizes the process, just as you said. But we need to do those same things just for everyday life. We need to. Part of the reason why the pandemic was so bad is because people were not prepared. And they're like, well, how am I supposed to prepare? I guarantee you, if you go to the St. Louis County Department of Health, they got a preparedness drop down. And I guarantee you that it certainly might say, updated, 2022. Like they updated it in the context of the pandemic. But I guarantee you that website has been in existence, far before the pandemic, right? the pandemic didn't cause us to do anything different than what the response to airborne pathogens has ever been. Wear a mask, stay inside, wear a mask. That ain't new to the circumstance. That has always been. Everything that they told us to do in response to COVID is the same thing you've ever been told to do, except for we ain't been telling us to do it. And so when it came, we were not prepared. And when you're not prepared, you're more anxious.
You know, and that's what's funny is the night of the first case here, we still had dinner, a couple of guys and I, and one of the guys I had dinner with was Bill Tate, who's now the president of LSU. But Bill Tate told me, look, guys, this is the last time, told us all, this is the last time we're going to be out for a while. He had written a paper, and he's from Chicago. He had written a white paper 10 years earlier about those airborne pathogens, and he sent it to me. And it was, it was Orwellian. It's like, are you crazy? And it played out to the letter. So to the point, this is not new.
No, it's not. And, and so my wife, she's laughing at me, because when I got into the preparedness stuff, I was all in. I got bags, masks, wherever I might be, I got what I need. In my office, I got stuff in my cars, I got stuff in the house, we got stuff, we got what we need in order to weather a lockdown, right? Because it could happen. And so we need to think like that, right? And so, but what we default to is, I know that you heard, and because I heard it here, the city, the government, they ain't coming. What about these elderly? Like, we know we have vulnerable populations. We have no planning and preparation for what to do for our vulnerable populations. And then we blame the people who don't take care of us otherwise for not responding to our vulnerable populations, because we're not prepared. And so these are all really kind of these types of things. Preparedness. This too is a part of mental health awareness, because you're again, going back to your question about first responders, your fight or flight response is also, kind of works in proportion to your level of preparedness.
That point right there needs to be highlighted over and over and over again. So in other words, your level of comfort is based on your level of preparation.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so if you're not prepared and you don't feel like you're competent to meet the challenge, then you're in flight mode. You're in you have a lot of diffuse anxiety, worried about what's going to happen. And so, other very simple things that are good for our mental health, but we don't think that they're good for our mental health. Read, listen to, or watch, get your information from legitimate sources. Whatever information it is that you need. If you live in St. Louis and you have questions about finances, don't call your little cousin. Go on the Fed, go on the St. Louis Federal Reserve website. That's the authoritative source of information, financial, in the city, in the city of St. Louis. And they got all kinds of stuff there. But like, we're not doing a great job of sourcing material. Like, we get too much information from drive time radio personalities. Right.
And morning shows that haven't read
we get too much information from there, right? Yes. And so And so not only are we vulnerable to misinformation and disinformation, we binge misinformation and disinformation. And so we have to have strategies for how we get informed and where and how we source our materials.
Yeah. So in other words, the readiness is in the preparedness, which was
Correct.
a motto we had when we were taking the bar. You know, you'll be ready when you're prepared, so prepare hard. That is very important. Doc, on a subsequent show, I would like to talk about the effects that alcohol has on our bodies when we drink it.
Mhm.
And you know, I've read some studies recently that have, you know, I've never been a big drinker. I don't drink at all. But that doesn't, you know, I never found fault with anyone who did. But I'm reading these studies that show just how toxic alcohol is to the constitution of the body. And I think that's something, you know, we need to explore both sides of that, because, you know, the Mediterranean diet specifically prescribes, you know, wine for the diet. So we need to find out what side we need to come out on that.
Yeah, and like even like with the Mediterranean diet, like I'm sure that it don't prescribe a bottle, right? And so like, you know, we hear information the way that we want. So we even when we get good information, we hear it the way that we want. We have a self-justification bias, right? So we'll hear things in the manner that allows us to do what we want to do. You know, like people who think, you know, I could work out this many days, and then on Saturday I can eat whatever I want. No, you can't never really just eat whatever you want,
Right.
right? You know, now I guess there's something is to say that you can eat to the degree that you want to work. You know, you
Right.
can, you know, you probably got a little more freedom or whatever, but you know, but some things, you know, I just don't think we have sense enough about our impacts. Like for me, I know my body doesn't do well with um artificial, like just with sugary drinks. So I don't drink a lot of soda. I don't drink a lot of, you know, I don't drink a lot of that stuff. I go to the juice bar and I get fresh squeezed juices. I don't really drink you know, a lot of, you know, the bottled stuff that you get out of the stores or whatever, because that sugar content in that, my body struggles with that. And so and it does matter how different things, like we don't always know these things, that you know how things are constituted. Like you can be talking about, like, you know, chemically you can be talking about like the same substance, but how that substance is constituted when you ingest it also impacts how well you metabolize it, right? And
That
so
is,
everything ain't everything. Some of these things change, and so again, like the fundamental key to good mental health really is information. It's like information and practice, right? That's baseline for good mental health, and that information starts with having the words to kind of understand and describe, and to be able to explain, you know, how you're feeling. You know, if you feel like hitting someone, you need to be able to say, I was so mad, I was so angry, I wanted to hit him. I was on one is not a feeling. it's, that doesn't help. That doesn't help a clinician, you know, help you, you know.
it's
And
a, it's an
so
it's an ambiguous
it's yes,
conclusory. It's an
yes.
ambiguous conclusory, you know, colloquialism.
I just snapped off.
Right.
These are not mental health terms, but we use them. Uh, he was wild. All of that stuff. This all things that I know what you mean if you say it, and I can get you to a point, you know, where we're actually dealing with some thoughts and feelings, but you ain't gonna always get that.
And that's why
Right?
it's important to have a culturally competent clinician,
That's why it's important to have a culturally competent, clinician. And so, you know, and it's crazy. Like I could be talking to white clinicians and they'll be like, he's mad because his baby's mama. That's like, don't say that. They're like, well, that's what he said. What? I don't care what he said. Help him to say that woman's name.
Right.
Don't you mask and mirror,
Mhm.
the health, the illiteracy. Don't you mask that. Give him the right. That's part of your profession. That's part of your professional responsibility.
That's correct.
Is to give people the right information because you're not the only person that they're ever going to be in front of. And they're, and so, so white people and other, and others, all of these others, they, and I'm sure some of us do it too, that just allow people to say stuff that is not good, it's not affirming, it doesn't work well for us. It has a cumulative effect on our well-being.
There's trauma in that statement alone.
There is trauma in the statement alone, right?
So,
And so,
there's nothing good that comes.
if you got a baby's mama, that's probably an ace for the child, right? That's probably an ace for the child.
Wow.
That's probably one ace right there. That's the child is probably, if you're having a conversation about a baby mama or a baby daddy, chances are that child is living apart from one of the child's parents.
And I'm seeing a child support judgment that that is looming. I'm seeing
there are all sorts of things.
All sorts of. There is
Yes.
absolutely nothing stable about that statement, and I maintained it. I maintain it, and people, I get pushback from individuals. But the very first institution for a child is the family,
And
and
so that statement
fragment.
suggests there's a fracture, right?
That's a fracture in the institution, and individuals on our own cannot compete with any institution and be successful theoretically. So that is that words are important, Doc, and you
Words are important.
hit that right on the head.
If he or she got a baby's mama or a baby's daddy, then we know there's so the first ace is that there's separation and there's a fraction in the family. The second ace is that if they calling each other that, there's conflict between mom and daddy. And because there's conflict between mom and daddy, there's probably, barriers to access. So that's 3 aces.
And let's define ACEs for the people that are listening to us for the first time again.
Adverse childhood experiences. And it's from birth to, I think, 17 years of age.
And the higher the
number, the more, and they're dose dependent. The more aces, the worse it gets. And so, and it starts off with, mood disturbance and, problems concentrating and probably somatic problems. And then as that intensifies, you probably start to get into some clinical syndromes to the degree that you haven't been able to address whatever those stressors were. And to the degree that you don't have access to care, or you don't necessarily know what's going on, or you don't have the immediate ability to correct, to address the stressor, those things turn into clinical syndromes. You don't have care, you start to self-medicate. And once you start to self-medicate, you make yourself more vulnerable to risky behaviors otherwise. And as that continues to proliferate, you start to have physical ailments because you're generally not taking care of yourself. And the net result of these years of literally mismanagement of the self is early death.
Wow.
And that's not just for, that's the other thing. That's just not for Black folks. The ACEs study was on predominantly white folks. That's where
in California originally, right?
Yeah. And so this is the thing. This is how the body works, and this is how the body responds to stress, and this is how the body responds when our response to stress is not adequate or appropriate, right? And so, big takeaway is that mental health is not white people stuff, right? This
Well,
is
see, the issue with that is one of them. I shouldn't even say the issue. What comes to mind to me, uh, uh, once again, impacted by these youngsters. This was a young lady that was teaching a yoga class during Black History Month several years ago, but I took the class. This was during COVID, as a matter of fact. And the young sister said it is very important for us to realize that for slaves, rest was a revolutionary concept. And we still embody the fact that we have to be busy at all times because that was normalized for us as slaves. And such as this mental health aspect, we still, I think, epigenetically believe that there's something wrong with us if we dare to take time to consider our own emotions. The point that you just stated earlier today, the fact that we need to develop a vocabulary for what we're feeling, that is groundbreaking. And one of the one of the underscores of that, as I heard someone state, and it makes sense to me, and I've employed it. But if you can name the emotion that you have, you can tame the emotion that you have. If I can identify that this high pressure situation gives me anxiety, I can then employ your breathing exercise. And if I employ the breathing exercise, I can get through the bear for the next time. So I think all of
and
this.
that's what it's about. That right is being able to identify the triggers, and like even that so so crazy thing is that then when we do learn some stuff, we're like out of control in that space too. So like trigger, oh, trigger alert, trigger, like then we're so
I'm a
the
napalm
whole
bomb right now, baby. I'm triggered.
yeah,
I'm a, you
yeah.
know
So
what?
the whole
I'm
point of
letting you know, I'm telling
understanding trigger,
everybody right now I'm triggered. Oh,
yes, the whole point
gotta
of
love
that
us.
is simply to be able to say, I know what it is that causes or elicits the response. And now that I know this, to the point that you just made, now that I know this, I can manage the situation differently. Trigger is not an end in itself; it's a means to an end. And so we treat trigger like a diagnosis. Oh, I was triggered. What happened? And so, but we've heard that word, and so I think it's good that we know the word, but we got to stay engaged with the process, and we got to learn what these things mean and what they connect to. And so, but brother, my device is about to die because I didn't plug it in,
Don't
and
worry about
so
it. I just have one more
uh,
thing.
uh,
I want you to suggest one book or source for individuals that are just feeling comfortable with getting in this space and identifying what's going on. If
go for folks who are online, go to NAMI, NAMI, or go to Mental Health America. It's the gentleman who founded Mental Health America, who is the person responsible for Mental Health Awareness Month. Go to the CDC, go to any of those sources. If you're not online, go to the library and get online and go to those sites. I mean, that's if you have a local health department that you can get to, go there. I'd imagine if you get to your local YMCA, they probably have this kind of information available to you. These are things again that I think that our churches and our mosques and our synagogues, they need to have this kind of information, on a kiosk somewhere for people to see and access. If you have children, you know, please ask your school to make sure that this type of information is available either through their health classes or that they, create some kind of activities otherwise that maybe on a quarterly basis, children and adults, larger families can have access to this kind of information, a couple of times out of the course of the year. And so it is necessary. And again, in learning just kind of basic relaxation techniques, breathing, just sitting quietly. Like literally, my mom used to be like, "I'm just gonna rest my eyes," like sit down, close your eyes, and just when the weather's nice, go outside, get you some sun. Just some very, very basic things.
Vitamin D is important.
Vitamin D is important.
All right. Well, thanks again, Doc. And I would be remiss if I did not send two additional birthday shout outs to my son, whom is another year older, and to my wife, whose birthday we celebrated last week while I was out. So,
Happy birthday, family.
I mean, I have to do that for my own mental health.
You should.
But Doc,
Indeed.
thank you so much, man. And
All right, brother. Thank you,
thank
as
you
usual.
all for listening. And we look forward, if it's God's will, seeing you next week.